So, thank you for joining our Contracting with the Federal Government webinar. My name is James Forrest. I'm the Program Coordinator for the Northern California Procurement Technical Assistance Center, otherwise known as PTAC. We're very thankful to have the main presentation today delivered by Paul Tavernia with the Small Business Administration, the SBA. We also have Patricia Silva here. Paul, could you go to the next slide? We also have Patricia Silva from Caltrans District 2 to tell you a bit about contracting with Caltrans. This is the fourth and the final part in our government contracting web series. So if you've hit all of them, then thank you very much, especially to you. Before we hand things over to our presenters, I want to tell you a little bit about PTAC. If you've been on these before, I'm sorry about the repeat, but it is important that everyone knows what a resource we are in our service area. So next slide, please. We are a nonprofit program. We're set up to help small businesses achieve success in the government marketplace. We're funded primarily by the Defense Logistics Agency. They really spearheaded this whole thing. We also get extra grant funding from other state and local funds. All of this means that we provide our services at no cost to the public. So that's pretty nice for you. We're hosted by the Humboldt State University Sponsored Programs Foundation. That means we're located up in Arcata, California, but our procurement specialists are located across the state and across the country. Last year, Norcal PTAC actually helped our clients win more than $268 million in government contracts. So you're in the right place. The way we do this, the way we help our clients is with these three basic core services. The first is counseling, one-on-one counseling. Procurement specialists can be set up with you to help you individually with just about any government contracting topic you can think of. If your business is located in one of these green counties on the map there's 15 counties in California, we can meet with you via phone, video conference, email, to walk you through the many processes of selling your goods and services to the government. Second thing we offer are these regular in-person and, well, not so much in-person now, but these virtual workshops like this one on government contracting topics. We often partner with other organizations to bring the most benefit to you, as we're doing today with the SBA. These are open to anyone to join from anywhere, so you don't have to be in one of these counties. Go ahead and check out our website, norcalptac.org/calendar, and you're going to find more upcoming events, but I will be going over some of those right before the Q&A today at the end. Third thing we do is we set our clients up with a free bid matching service. This gives you daily access to federal, state, local, and even prime contractor opportunities. So if you have this tool set up, you'll be notified when a bid request is posted if it matches your desired criteria. So you can choose what you get, and this allows you to stay on top of the opportunities made available for you. It's a really useful tool. So if your business is located in one of these 15 counties, you're eligible to apply for our services. Like I said, you can join these webinars without being a client. All counseling can be provided remotely by phone, email, or video conference. So if you are a client, you don't need to leave your office to get the help you need, which is especially helpful during the COVID era. To apply for Norcal PTAC services, all you have to do is go to our website, norcalptac.org, click on the red Apply Now button on the page banner, and follow the instructions through step 7 and hit Save. If you've ever worked with a Small Business Development Center at SBDC in the northern region here, you should instead email me at info@norcalptac.org, and I'll send you a special link to apply. We share a database with them. That's why. We are one PTAC amid somewhere between 90 and 95. It's changing right now. 95 PTACs across the country. So if you're not in one of these counties, rest assured you are probably in the jurisdiction of another PTAC. We encourage you to look up and apply for your local PTAC. We should be able to offer similar services to the clients in your area. Little housekeeping before we hand things over. There is a Q&A feature here. I will be monitoring it. So if you have any questions during the presentation, go ahead and enter them into that Q&A window. So if you click on Q&A, it should pop something up. If you enter your question in there and not in the chat, there's also a chat. If you're having technical difficulties, you can't hear us or something like that, you can type something in the chat. I will be sending some message in the chat, but we will not be monitoring it for the Q&A, which is reserved for content. So if you have any questions that at the end of the Q&A, you feel like we didn't really get to your question or the answer wasn't satisfactory, don't fret, just send me an email, info@norcalptac.org, and I will see if we can get your question answered. And it's indeed often the case that not all the questions are answered. Some of them are best answered privately one-on-one and things like that. So for those of you who have joined in the middle of my spiel, we are video recording this, the slides, and this video recording with all the audio and everything. They're all going to be posted to our website and emailed to all of the participants within the next day. So I think that's it for my deal. Let's hand it over first to Patricia Silva from Caltrans District 2, who's going to say a few words. Tricia, we can't hear you just yet. Tricia?
Yeah, can you?
I heard something. It sounds a little warbled.
Okay.
Okay, now we got you.
Okay.
Kind of. The reception does not sound great, but.
Good. Okay. Oh, it doesn't. Maybe try to call.
The call didn't work when we did it before. It was, sorry folks, we did demo this right before everyone joined, and we were able to hear her fine. Are you on your Wi-Fi network, Tricia, or did it switch to something else? Okay, I'm gonna have to make an executive decision here and just give a little intro for Tricia, unless we can start to hear her. Basically, she is the small business and CalCard liaison for Caltrans District 2, representing all of Caltrans. Sorry, Tricia, we're not going to be able to hear you with that. Sorry about that. Okay, she basically partners with us for these webinars. She's representing all of Caltrans in California. You can look up their service area. There's a bunch of different districts. I'm sure Tricia would do a better job explaining all of this. But basically, you're all going to get the slide deck here. Each of these is a link that Tricia has done work in finding that these are going to be useful for you if you're interested in doing work with Caltrans, not just District 2, but I believe if you go to the next page, there's also these PDFs and contact information. So if you're trying to find out how to do electronic bidding, general doing business with Caltrans, all sorts of resource links. There's also a Caltrans district map. You can see the most updated version of where all the boundaries on the Caltrans districts are. And then Tricia also has her email address and the email address for the Small Business Advocate listed down at the bottom. So this is basically a treasure trove of goodies for all of you to check out once you get the slides later today. And we do apologize for the technical glitch there. You can, if you want Tricia's spiel, you can go onto our YouTube page or onto our website and look at previous webinars, and she puts it much more detailed than I could do. But thanks Tricia. We gave it the old college try. Now let's hand things over to Paul Tavernia, who is with the Small Business Administration, the SBA, and we're very happy to have you partnering with us for this event. Thanks, Paul.
All right, thanks, James. Good morning, everyone. Yes, my name is Paul Tavernia. I'm the lead business opportunity specialist with the SBA Sacramento District Office. So I'm the single point of contact really in our office relative to federal government contracting. And delightful for the opportunity today, delighted with the opportunity today to kind of give you kind of an introduction to the federal contracting arena. But what I like to do at the front end of all the webinars that I've been doing for months now is to give the audience kind of a flavor for what the SBA is all about and kind of what our mission is. You've probably heard a lot about the SBA in terms of the coronavirus pandemic, but we're much more than that. And you can see, the four statements there in terms of what we're all about. If you're an entrepreneur, you've got an idea, you're thinking about, how can I make a business out of it? We've got either ourselves and we've got resource partners to help you get started. If you're in business, we can help you take it to another level. If your product or service lends itself to overseas markets, we can help you expand into the import-export arena as appropriate for your business. And then another large part of what we do is recovery aspects when there's a nationally declared disaster, as we're seeing now, not only in the pandemic, but also with the wildfires that are going on here in California. So with that, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about the SBA's programs and services. Access to capital is a large part of what we do, probably what we're most better known for providing. We don't actually, in the normal course of things, lend money directly to small businesses. What we provide is loan guarantees. So we have two flagship programs, the 7A Loan Guarantee Program, which is geared towards more general purpose lending requirements, things like inventory, business acquisition, working capital. What we do there is, let's say the small business is talking to their bank. They're asking for a loan. Maybe it's not quite inside the bank's typical lending parameters. Then what they can do, the bank can come to the SBA if they're an SBA approved lender, and we can guarantee usually on the order of about 75% of the loan that the bank makes to that small business. So what we're trying to do is mitigate the bank's risk and provide an incentive for them to make a loan to a small business that they normally might not make. The second loan program, the 504 loan program, is geared towards fixed assets, primarily commercial real estate. So it's targeted for small businesses that are looking to acquire a building to house their operations. The typical transaction there is the bank puts in 50%. The SBA, through one of our certified development companies, puts up 40%, which is 100% guaranteed by the SBA. And the borrower typically puts up 10%. So what it allows is the borrower to do is save on their capital for other business purposes, in contrast to a normal commercial real estate loan type thing. The Paycheck Protection Program, I'm sure you've read all about that, given the pandemic. That program has now expired as of August 8th. So if you were able to take advantage of that, hopefully it was very helpful. And now the challenge there is trying to figure out the forgiveness piece of it, right? So for things that, for the up-to-date information on the PPP program, I invite you to go to the Department of Treasury's website, treasury.gov, or the SBA website, sba.gov/coronavirus, both of them. For the latest frequently asked questions, the final rules, as well as, now that they're getting through or starting to roll out the forgiveness aspects of the PPP program, all of the latest and greatest information will be located on those two websites. In addition, we've got some more specialized capital-focused programs. The SBIC program is targeted mainly, I kind of classify it as targeting venture capitalists, where we can provide them funding, which they in turn can leverage and make incremental investments to other small businesses. So like a 2-to-1 leverage to provide, kind of a broader reach maybe into small emerging companies that need, some introductory financing. The SBIR and STTR programs are more specialized, focused on research and technology development, and with an eye of maybe being acquired by the government. So that's where we kind of look at companies that are engaged in those kind of activities and provide some capital to further their research or their technology development. For those of you in the construction business, we have a surety bond guarantee program where, like the loan guarantee programs, we don't actually provide the surety or the bond, I should say, to the small construction company, but what we do is we actually guarantee upwards of about 90% of the bond that the surety company makes to the construction enterprise. There again, wanting the whole purpose there is to provide, maybe some additional bonding capacity, a little bit easier for small fledgling construction companies to help them grow capacity and self-performance capabilities, maybe a little bit faster via access to enhanced bonding. Contracting, we're going to talk all about that today. We, obviously are helping small businesses in the federal contracting arena. We oversee the socio-economic programs that we're going to talk about today. We are the keeper of the size standards based upon your North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS codes. And we monitor those and update those on an as-needed basis. And then also one of the things we do from a contracting standpoint is if an agency wants to potentially award a contract, but they're not quite sure, they can come to us and we can help vet that potential contractor to ensure that they've got the capacity and performance capabilities to successfully execute on that requirement. Counseling certainly is a big part of what we do, and James alluded to that a little bit. We've got 68 field offices here in the SBA scattered amongst the country and territories, so we're not very far away. And we provide funding to a number of nationwide networks. James alluded to the Small Business Development Centers, a nationwide network, typically tied in with a institution of higher learning, but not necessarily so. We're lucky and we've got some 45 SBDCs here in California. In my district, Sacramento district alone, we have 6 SBDCs. So net message there is small business development centers are probably pretty close to wherever you happen to be. And their focus is on the access to capital that we were talking about. So a large part of how they're measured is helping small businesses and entrepreneurs with putting together bank-ready packages to go and secure capital financing, either to start or to grow their businesses. We also provide support for a nationwide network of women's business centers. It's not gender specific, so they support non-women-owned businesses as well. But one of the key things that the WBCs are able to do is they can work with nonprofits. So it kind of expands their reach, if you will. And we're lucky we have a women's business center right here in Sacramento that's overseen by California Capital Financial Corporation. And there again, nationwide network, and to help women-owned businesses and nonprofits. We also provide funding for SCORE, the Service Corps of Retired Executives. Hopefully you've heard about them. Nationwide network of some 8,000 to 10,000 volunteers with industry experience that are, basically giving back. And we're fortunate here in the Sacramento district to have a very robust SCORE chapter, some 35 or 40 counselors. And their focus is kind of on the entrepreneurial side, the front end. I've got an idea. I want to see if I can flesh this thing out to become a business type of environment. We also support Veterans Business Outreach Centers, or VBOCs. There again, we're lucky. We have a VBOC here in Sacramento that covers pretty much the northern 2/3 of California and all of the state of Nevada. Focused with helping folks that have transitioned out of the military, either from an entrepreneurial or a business ownership standpoint. But one of the other main things that they do for us is they manage our Boots to Business program, which is targeted towards those individuals that are going to be transitioning out of the military. And they put them, it's a pretty rigorous 1 to 2 day workshop, if you will, to help those folks kind of make an assessment as to whether entrepreneurship or business ownership might be a viable path for them as they transition out of the military. Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, as James said, they are not supported by the SBA, but by the DLA. However, we work very closely with the PTACs because there again, we're, at least in from my standpoint, They're contracting centric, as am I. In Sacramento, we refer people back and forth all the time. We've got a PTAC in Sacramento as well, also overseen by California Capital. So from a counseling standpoint, you've got general business counseling, you've got specialized counseling available, whether you're on the entrepreneurial side or you're already in business, and specifically also to contracting. That last box there on the disaster side, another huge part of what SBA does. Whenever there's a nationally declared disaster, typically like a hurricane or a flood, or in the state, or in the example of California, wildfires, SBA comes in arm in arm with FEMA to provide assistance to small businesses and individuals that have been adversely affected by that disaster. The economic injury disaster loan, I'm sure you've heard a lot about that in the context of the corona pandemic, and that program is still viable. It's still alive and well. With for those businesses that have sustained some economic adversity as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. A component of that was the EIDL Advance, which was a forgivable piece. That is no longer available. Those funds have been exhausted. But a key point to remember is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, or EIDL loan, is still available for the pandemic, and I'm sure will be available as a result of the wildfires that are occurring in our state right now. Those last two bullets are where the SBA, again, will directly lend to small business and homeowners, in this case, where their structures have sustained physical damage. So after they've exhausted all of their insurance options, if there's still a shortfall in terms of the funding they need to rebuild their facility or house, then the SBA can provide a term loan at below market interest rates with a relatively long amortization period to help those small businesses and homeowners get back in business, or get back into their house. So now that you know a little bit more about what the SBA is all about, let's talk about selling to the federal government and why you might want to consider it. Well, in any given year, the federal government spends upwards of $500 billion in discretionary spending. So there's a lot of money out there that we spend every year, year in and year out. And 23% of that is supposed to go to small businesses by statute. Last year, that amounted to I believe the figure was $133 billion in small business contracts. So in any given year, there's a lot of money out there. Now, the reality is you need to really be focused on which federal agencies you want to sell to, because you can get strung out trying to be all things to everybody. But there's money available if you can differentiate yourself and find the right targeted agencies. Within that 23%, or that $100+ billion, there are subset goals targeting specific socioeconomic groups, and you can see them listed there. And we'll talk in more detail about those different socioeconomic groups as we go through today's presentation. Okay, so you may have heard the term set aside in terms of from the context of federal contracting. What that means is an agency is carving out a requirement targeting a specific socioeconomic group. Okay, and you can see them there. We just listed them. Basically trying to provide a better opportunity, level the playing field, if you will, by narrowing the competitive mix for that specific requirement. Helping these disadvantaged businesses, if you will, compete vis-a-vis the general small business population at large. And also because every federal agency has specific goals against, contracting goals for these socioeconomic groups. They'll do, that's why they execute these set-aside contracts. Where do we come into play? Well, we are working lockstep with the federal agencies in our district, advocating on behalf of small businesses, not just the socioeconomic designated business, but small businesses in general, to make sure that that remains top of mind with the federal government contracting activities here in our geography. We meet with the agencies, either, well, used to be face-to-face, now it's via, virtual meetings, if you will, on a regular basis, not only to keep them apprised of what's going on from a rules and regulations standpoint with the SBA programs, but also to help them understand, the small business population available to help them meet their requirements. One of the other things that we do is we manage the more formal programs where there's a formal review and approval process by the SBA, the 8A program, Hub Zone, historically underutilized business zone, and the women-owned small business contracting programs. And we'll talk more in depth about those as we get going. So if you're a small business and you're thinking, well, maybe the federal government is a marketplace that I want to explore. Well, the key thing is to do a little bit of introspection and a little bit of data mining on the front end. So first question there, does the federal government buy what it is I sell? Chances are we probably do. But the key thing there is figuring out which agencies buy what it is you sell and how do they buy it. And I will tell you, I think I've got a slide on it or some information on it later on, but let's just talk about it. The big database in the sky is Federal Procurement Data System, or fpds.gov. So all contracting activity has to be entered in there. And if you go into FPDS and you start, learning how to navigate, and you'll eventually get some meaningful searches where you'll be able to find out, okay, which federal agencies buy what it is I sell, where are they located, and what contracting vehicle do they use? Do they use small business set-asides of one flavor or another? Or do they buy primarily off a federal supply schedule or a multiple award schedule? So that's some of the research you want to do up front as you consider targeting the federal government as a customer space. You want to do the introspection that says, do I have the experience, the management experience, the industry experience, the personnel, sufficient capitalization, and some of the other financial aspects to your business to take on the federal government contracting role. One of the things to keep in mind is working capital and capitalization, because if you start on a contract, there's a certain amount of time between the time you start and the time you get your first progress payment, and you're going to have to cover that float. So, you want to kind of make sure you've got access to capital, whether it's a revolving line of credit or whatever the case may be, to help you cover that float before you receive your first payments from the federal government. And you want to look at your own capacity and self-performance capabilities, because there are self-performance criteria in the federal government, depending upon what type of contract it is. For construction, general construction, from a small business standpoint, we want to see at least 15% self-fulfillment or self-performance, if you will, on that contract. And that's the labor component of the contract, exclusive of materials and equipment. Specialty construction is 25%, but anything else in software and services related, we want to see at least 51% self-performance. So something to be aware of as you look at your own capabilities in terms of trying to execute contracts with the federal government. Finding contracting opportunities, I think I've got some more information on that further on, but let's just talk about it now. There used to be a system called Federal Business Opportunities, or FedBizOps. That has now been replaced by beta.sam.gov. So it's part of the sam.gov system that we'll talk about. Not the most user-friendly system, I'll tell you that, but there you can find out, what's on the horizon, what's been published, whether it be a sources sought where an agency is doing market research, or maybe a solicitation where the agencies are actually asking for pricing and a proposal. So next slide here this is what we're going to kind of cover in a little bit more depth. How to figure out identifying your product or service, getting started with registrations, making sure your information is optimized, the different certifications that are available. Then we're going to talk about marketing, looking for opportunities we talked a little bit about already. We'll touch a little bit on the different contracting vehicles, things to keep in mind from a rule standpoint, and then we've got a slide on some local resources as well. Okay, so I alluded to a little bit more when we talked about size standards, the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS codes. And you can see the URL to go and figure out what your primary and any secondary NAICS codes are, because that's what the federal government uses. But different public sector entities use different classification systems. So for instance, the state of California uses the United Nations Standard Product Code. So you want to know what your product or service is relative to UNSPC. Down in Sacramento County, they use a system called public purchase, which again is a different classification system. So as you look to sell your product or service to different federal sector or public sector entities, you want to keep in mind or try and figure out, okay, what's their classification system so I accurately identify my business to them. The DoD, Federal Supply Group and class, I don't see that very much, so I'm not really that familiar with it. Most everything that we're involved with our federal agencies is NAICS code based. So how do you get started? Well, any business, small, medium, or large, that wants to do business with the feds has to register in a system called the System for Award Management, sam.gov. You can see the URL there. The first step in that process is getting a DUNS number. You can see the contact information to accomplish that. The DUNS number is nothing more than a unique identifier for your business. It looks like a social security number or a tax ID number, but it doesn't have any of those kind of financial implications. It's strictly a unique identifier. And the key thing is when you register with Dun & Bradstreet, your company information and everything, you want to make sure that when you go into sam.gov and it asks for that information, that you copy it exactly, including punctuation and everything else. Because otherwise, if it's not correct, then you're going to go back and forth, and it could create some issues. So you want to make sure that you know exactly how you're registered with Dun & Bradstreet, so you can replicate that when you create your entity or your profile in sam.gov. We talked about NAICS codes. You'll have to identify a primary NAICS code, but also you should be prepared to input all the secondary NAICS codes that apply to your business as well. SAM and SBA profiles. SAM is going to be pretty straightforward in that they're going to talk to you or ping you, if you will, for data entry points. So you can just take your company data and input that. As you go through and create your entity, there will be a prompt that asks you if you want to go complete your SBA supplemental information. And you want to say yes, and then that'll take you over to SBA land. And there you can input a couple of real key things. One is your capabilities narrative, which is 2 to 3 sentences where you describe exactly what it is your company does. But also it allows you to go in and put in keywords that are applicable to your business or your industry. And the reason that's important is, sometimes agencies, if they're looking to fulfill a requirement, they might search a specific geography by keywords. And the example I use is like fencing. Which companies have fencing in their profile in, Shasta County, for instance, or whatever. So it's very important that you input your capabilities narrative and the keywords in your SBA supplemental information. And certainly you want to keep all of your profiles up to date on a regular basis so that they're accurate and represent who you are. So depending upon, what type of business you're in, and, you want to look at whether or not you qualify for any of the socioeconomic subsets. It's to try and increase their opportunities, if you will, and to provide, a level of competition and an opportunity for businesses where there might be some economic distress, if you will. So we'll get into how those factor in going forward. So formal certifications. We talked about it a little bit earlier. The 8A Business Development Program and the Hub Zone Program, historically underutilized business zone. It's a formal review and approval process by the SBA. There are opportunities for sole source contracts. I will tell you that it's much more prevalent in the 8A world than the Hub Zone world because the rules are a little bit different. For instance, with Hub Zone or women-owned small businesses, although the regulations indicate the opportunity for sole source contracts, it would only happen if that small business, either Hub Zone or women-owned, is the only firm in the country that provides that product or service. So the odds of that are pretty long. So it's very, very, very rare that we see sole source contracts in the other contracting programs other than the 8A Business Development Program. That next bullet, one of the things that's unique to the Hub Zone program is the 10% price evaluation, where if it's a full and open competition and the Hub Zone firm maybe is the second lowest bidder against a large business, but if they're within 10% of the lowest bid, if you will, by a large business, they can be awarded that contract. And then the 8A program has a finite duration, and we'll talk about that in terms of the business development activities and what the SBA provides. So in addition to the formal certifications, up until recently, the Women-Owned Small Business Program was also pretty much just a self-certification. You could either get a third-party certifier or you could upload your documents into our repository, and we didn't do any review and approval of that. However, Congress told us we needed to tighten things up a little bit. So beginning last month, we started taking applications for a more formal certification review and approve process. And we've got a new portal open specific to the Women-Owned Small Business Program. And it is beta.certify.sba.gov. So it's a whole new platform. If you happen to be already self-certified as a WSB or EDWSB, you're going to have to reload all of your information, supporting information, into the beta.certify.sba.gov system. And then beginning in the middle of October, we're going to be taking a look at those applications and making formal determinations of eligibility. So it's going to be much more formal, like Hub Zone and 8A, and the time to get started is now. Veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran-owned outside of the VA are still self-certifications. If you want to do business with the VA, though, and you're either VOSB or SDVOSB, you need to go through their formal certification process, becoming a certified veteran enterprise. And you can see there's a URL to get additional information on that. If you don't fit into any of the socioeconomic categories, you can just register as a small business. Small disadvantaged business is a self-certification that has implications for economic and social disadvantage, similar to 8A, but without the formal review and approval process. So let's talk about the 8A program. Like I mentioned, it's a 9-year finite duration business development program. So it's targeting individuals that are both socially and economically disadvantaged, and we'll talk about that. But it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So the individuals upon whom eligibility is based, they can only go be part of the program once. From an eligibility standpoint, the business has to be small by the size standards, and that applies to all of the different small business categories. 51% socially and economically disadvantaged, owned and controlled, and control is a huge piece of what we look at. One of the things that's unique to the 8A program is we have a 2-year in business rule. that we want to see as part of the application and review process that the firm has been in business for at least 2 years, has successfully executed on contracts, is generating revenues and profits, has a positive working capital and net worth position. And the reason we have the 2-year in business rule relates back to what we were talking about before in terms of sole source contracts. So if an agency identifies a specific 8A firm that they are looking to make a sole source contract available to them, we want to make sure that that firm is going to have the capability and capacity to successfully execute. Because what we don't want to do is set them up for failure. So the 8A program is not geared towards startups. The other socioeconomic programs don't have a time and business requirement, but the 8A program does. And you can see the URL there at the bottom on how to get more information about the program specifically. How to apply for the 8A program? Again, registering in SAM, going into our certified.sba.gov system, which is the previous certify system, as opposed to beta.certify, which is the women-owned platform now. So you can complete the online application. Within Certify, there's a knowledge base where you can go and search and find out or get to the initial documentation checklist that'll give you a pretty good understanding of all the supporting documentation. It's pretty involved. It's, ideally we would like to see 3 years of tax returns and financial statements, capability statements, bank signature cards, things like that, to verify, the businesses, who they are and what they do. In order to accomplish that, you've got resources available. Certainly myself in the Sacramento district office and my counterparts in other SBA district offices around the country. You've got our web portal there, but specifically the PTACs do a real good job of helping small businesses, individuals, not only with the 8A application process, but the other socioeconomic applications as well. So great resources available for you. The Hub Zone program, it's geared towards, well, let me go back on the 8A program. As a business development program, one of the things the SBA is responsible for is management and technical assistance to the small businesses on an annual basis. So any given year, SBA usually hires 3 or 4 consulting firms to provide one-on-many webinar-based contracting-centric education. And then we're required to do that by statute. The other thing is every 8A company is assigned a business opportunity specialist like myself, and we are on the hook to do an 8A annual review. According, it's compliance work that we have to do. And that what that does is that allows us to, kind of maintain some visibility to the 8A firms in our portfolio, and also to make sure that we're providing the right kind of support for them to grow and foster in the 8A BD program. Hub Zone, it's geared towards geographic areas based on census tract data, if you will, that are experiencing economic strife, either higher than average unemployment or lower than average per capita income. So, usually the Hub Zone maps, they're targeted based upon the census tract data. However, they get updated on an informal basis as things change. Right now, the Hub Zone maps are frozen because we're going through the 2020 census, and they will continue to be frozen probably until the end of 2021. That's when they expect the census tract data to be published. And then, there may be some shifting in terms of census tracts that become Hub Zone eligible and others that are no longer Hub Zone eligible. But for right now, everything's frozen. The 2 main eligibility criteria: the principal office of the Hub Zone has to be the principal office of the business has to be located in a Hub Zone. That's number one. And number two is at least 35% of the employees have to live in a hub zone. Doesn't necessarily have to be the same hub zone that the office is located, but they have to live in a hub zone, because the hub zone program really is a jobs creation program. We're trying to provide an incentive via the contracting program for firms to, if they're already located there, or maybe to relocate into an area that's experiencing economic strife, and to provide employment opportunities to the folks that live in those areas. There have been a couple of changes with the Hub Zone program. It's going to be an annual certification now, as opposed to once every 3 years. But it's, once you're certified for that year, it's good for 12 months, and you don't have to recertify every time you bid on or maybe look to be awarded a contract. The other nice thing about it, which is new news, is if you're a Hub Zone firm, you've got folks that are working for you, living in a Hub Zone, let's say your or their economic situation improves, they're able to move out of a Hub Zone and maybe, find a house in a better neighborhood, or whatever you want to describe it as. The great thing is, if as long as that employee remains employed by that company, then it counts towards that 35% threshold, even if they no longer reside in a Hub Zone. SBA.gov/Hub Zone, you can get to the Hub Zone map, key in an address, and that will tell you whether or not that particular location is Hub Zone eligible or not. Applying for the Hub Zone program. Again, registering exam is task number one. We use the old general login system right now to access the Hub Zone application. You can see the URL there. Hopefully at some point in time, the Hub Zone application will migrate to the Certify, but it's not there yet. So the good news is it's now an online application process, so you can fill in all the information and then upload all the supporting documentation to verify, where the firm is, as well as all the employee information relative to the 35% threshold. Annual recertification, and there again, there's lots of folks available to help you, as well as the SBA website. Women-owned small business and economically disadvantaged WOSB program. This it's been on the books for a long time, somewhere around 2001, I think it is, but really didn't start coming into play probably until the Small Business Jobs Act in 2011, after the Great Recession. That's when they started to put some teeth into it in terms of making additional opportunities available for women-owned businesses in the federal contracting arena. You can see the eligibility criteria. Again, it's majority ownership by either one woman or women, and they have to control the day-to-day operations, so the hiring and firing, making the commitments, financial commitments as an example, on behalf of the company. I think there might have been some fraud going on in the past, and that's why Congress said, SBA, you need to transition to a more formal review and approval process for the WOSB contracting program. So we want to look at, compensation. We want to look that they hold the highest position. When it comes to specific industries, there are subsets of NAICS codes applicable to the WOSB and the EDWOSB certification. They don't overlap. So depending upon, if you're a woman-owned business, depending upon what your primary NAICS code is, you can determine whether or not it falls into WOSB or EDWOSB or neither of those, which could be the case as well, because not all of the NAICS codes are divided between those two. So from an economic disadvantaged WOSB, same criteria, except there are some adjusted net worth thresholds, if you will, to be met to qualify for the EDWOSB. And it's, adjusted gross income threshold of 350K, Total assets, including business assets, less than or equal to $6 million. You have to be, obviously, the primary NAICS code has to be one of the ones that's been identified. And then we've got the adjusted net worth calculation, which is essentially you take your normal net worth, and this is kind of what we do for the 8A program as well in determining economic disadvantages. You take your normal net worth for the individual, assets minus liabilities. From that, you can subtract the equity in the primary residence, the equity in the business, and any tax advantage like 401k retirement plans, where you would incur a significant penalty for early withdrawal. And for the EDWSB, the resultant has to be $750,000. For the 8A business development program, that threshold is actually $250,000. So with the 8A program, we want you to be poor when you get in the program. However, we let you grow and acquire some personal worth, because the threshold actually goes up to $750K after you've been approved into the 8A program. The process is through Certify, actually now beta.certify.sba.gov, uploading all the documentation, and you can see the dates there that we talked about in terms of when you can start and when we're going to start making decisions. You also have the option of going through a third-party certifier. It will be at a cost, but it might be applicable for you to have somebody help you kind of get all the supporting documentation in order, and then they can stamp it, their seal of approval on it, and then that plus all the supporting documents gets uploaded into the SBA repository. And sba.gov/WOSB ready is the place to go to find out about the new women-owned processes. Service disabled veteran-owned small business is a specific contracting set-aside category. Whereas veteran-owned small business, although you can self-certify, agencies can, other than the VA, cannot do a VOSB set-aside, but they can do service-disabled veteran-owned set-asides. Here's the eligibility criteria, similar to the others, except that if the service-disabled veteran has a permanent severe disability, then either a spouse or caregiver can actually control the day-to-day operations of the business. But why is it important if you are a veteran-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned firm? If you're looking to do business with the federal government, the VA should be at the top of your list if you're in one of those two categories, because they put service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses at the top of the pecking order, if you will, followed by VOSBs, and then pretty much everything else. And the one thing about the VA that's unique is that they are able to do sole source contracts to service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So it's unique to the VA, but if you're an SDV, OSB, looking to get into the federal space, then the VA should be at the top of your list of targeted agencies. And there again, you can see the URL to go to additional information on how to get CVE certified. So marketing, shifting gears a little bit here. Talked a little about FPDS, Federal Procurement Data Systems, the big database in the sky. And that's where you can figure out who buys what it is you sell. There's a subset called USA Spending, probably a little bit more user-friendly. And there, I've used it, it's been a while, but you can go in and actually see contract activities based upon a specific congressional district. So you can get a little bit more granular in terms of where you're looking for contracting activities and that sort of thing. Certainly you want to visit websites for these, the agencies that you think are in your wheelhouse. Find out as much as you can about them. Look for forecasting opportunities with them. Trying to, in the past, it was look for events where you could go face-to-face, meet with contracting people or procurement people or program people across the desk, across the table via matchmaking type events. to kind of establish a working relationship or a personal relationship. It's a little bit challenging now. However, the agencies are still conducting events online in a virtual environment. Big example of that is next week, the Navy Gold Coast event, which is typically held down in San Diego in the summer. 500, 600, 700 people having access to a whole plethora of federal agencies to market to. It's going all virtual. So I'm actually going to be attending from my home office next week. But there again, it's adapting to the current environment, figure out which agencies you want to target, and find out what events, what webinars, matchmaking events, whatever the case may be, is just trying to start fostering some personal relationships, looking for forecasts, to kind of get an idea of what's coming on down the pipe. We talked about FedBizOps, which is now beta.sam.gov. Agencies will post sources sought and pre-solicitations when they're doing their market research. If you see something on beta.sam that looks like it's in your wheelhouse, it's a source of sought, we strongly encourage small businesses to respond with their capabilities, because that gives that agency the justification to do some sort of a small business set aside, whether it be total small business or whether it be maybe one of the socioeconomic subsets that we're talking about today. Okay. Another thing to think about when we're talking, I've been talking to folks for a dozen years that I've been in this job, looking to get into the federal arena. Maybe look at being a subcontractor to begin with, to kind of get your feet wet in terms of understanding what's going on in the federal space and what's involved with federal contracting processes, without all the associated risk of being a prime contractor. So that you can see some URLs there to find out potential subcontracting opportunities as well. So just something to consider, depending upon what it is you sell and kind of where you are in the process of marketing or selling to the federal government. And go to if you're in FPDS and you're looking at existing or previous contract information, you can find out who the prime contractor was, and a whole lot of information about that contract. And then maybe start putting together a marketing campaign towards those specific prime contractors that are doing work in your specific area of expertise. Let's talk a little bit about marketing, since we've broached that subject. You want to make sure, obviously, that your profile information is updated and accurate. Social media is, you want to make sure it's professional, and again, a true reflection of what it is you do. In the federal space, the capability statement is key. If you ever have attended a federal type of conference or event that has exhibitors, or if you will, they're always going to ask for hard copy of your capability statement. That's just the way the feds operate. In today's environment, you want to make sure you've got an electronic capability statement, and it's make sure it's clear and concise. So when you're sending out your marketing emails, you understand that the person on the other end is busy, and so they're when they open up your email, you want to have your capability statement embedded right in the email. Figure that you've got about 20 to 30 seconds of mind share. So in a half a minute or less, you want them to be able to, who you are, how to get a hold of you, and what it is you do, what certifications you have, maybe some previous customers that you've done work for, bullets that further define what it is you do, okay? Certainly business cards and an elevator speech when you have the opportunity to have a face-to-face or voice-to-voice interaction is key as well. But the capability statement is pretty huge in the federal contracting arena. And so, what are we looking at in terms of what should be included in the capability statement. And you can see, I alluded to them a little bit before, and you can see them listed there. So, obviously, if you're developing a marketing campaign, send it out. My tagline is be persistent, but don't be a pest. About every 10 weeks or so, maybe blast it out again. And if you get some contact information, maybe from a SourceSat posting or a pre-solicitation posting on beta.sam.gov, make some phone calls as well. Or if you have new news to share, let's say you were awarded a contract, then by all means, send them another marketing email, ping them again, because you want to keep bubbling up to the top of their head, because it's essentially advertising 101. It takes 5 to 7 touches for the person on the other end of the line to really know who it is you are and what you do. There's a couple of examples of capability statements. I'm a big fan of color or photographs, something to kind of draw attention. But this way, and they can glance at this thing and have, in real short order, like I said, have a real good understanding of who you are and what you do. Okay. So beta.sam.gov, we've talked about a couple of times already. Anything over 25K should be posted in beta.sam.gov. FedConnect is another one I'm not that familiar with, but the agencies that we deal with, most of them, if not all of them, use beta.sam.gov, or maybe GSA uses their GSA eBuy marketplace as well. Talking about smaller requirements, one of the things that just changed is the government credit card purchases. The thresholds went up a little bit. So civilian agencies and even DOD, either up to $5,000 or $10,000, they can just call you up, get a quote, give you a PO number, and away you go. And so if your product or service lends itself to small dollar transactions, you want to look at which agencies buy it, and they're probably buying it via the government credit card. The federal government spends billions and billions of dollars every year on credit card acquisitions, so something to definitely take a look at. And as we talk about the smaller dollar procurements, you can see kind of some of the rules there for what's involved in the processes. Anything below the simplified acquisition threshold, or SAT as it's known, automatically goes to small business unless there's some sort of compelling reason, such as maybe something related to a national disaster or an emergency, that sort of thing. And actually, for right now, during the pandemic, that SAT threshold has been raised to 750K. So might be something to think about if your product or service is something that you can bring to the market to help with this pandemic, if you will. GSA, they've got their multiple award schedules, otherwise known as federal supply schedules. So as you're doing market research, you want to find out whether your product or service is listed or could be listed on a GSA schedule, and whether or not the agencies buy what it is you sell via the GSA schedule, because it might be a way to go in terms of getting some additional exposure to federal agencies. Okay. Then there's some other agencies that have their own specific contracting vehicles. I'm not really familiar with too many of those. We don't really deal with those on a regular basis at all. Okay. So if you want to do business with the feds, it's incumbent that you know the rules. And I've listed some of the parts there, the subparts that are most prevalent. FAR Part 19 is the one that we're most interested in because that defines all the rules and regulations for the small business programs, all the socio-economic programs that we talked about today. And then the SBA specifically, we use the Code of Federal Regulations 13 CFR, pretty much 13 CFR 121 through 125. And that has a lot of the same regulations with the FAR. However, it also has information about SBA specific programs and the requirements for like joint ventures, mentor protege agreements, those kind of things. So folks will call us, have questions. We'll do research. We'll look at both the FAR and 13 CFR to kind of figure out exactly what the rules and regulations are that apply. And then some agencies, specifically like the DoD, they've got their own supplemental regulations that add even more over and above the FAR. So that's a little map of the district that I'm involved in. We basically go from San Joaquin County to the Oregon border, and then from the Nevada border to the coastal counties. You can see the contact information for my district office. We're located in Citrus Heights, which is right outside of Sacramento. If you've got a specific question, you can call us, leave a message, because we're all pretty much teleworking out of our home offices these days. But somebody from our office will call you back. Also, there's the URL there to get to our district office. And I would invite you to go there because if you go to the Sacramento district office webpage, you scroll down, there's an icon that looks like an envelope that asks if you want to opt in to get email updates. And I think every district office has the same option. And I encourage people to opt in because if you do, then you'll get emails that have all of the events, the webinars, the education that's going on in that district office, whether it's SBA or any of our resource partners, that sort of thing. So you can really get a good idea of all the activities and opportunities for education and whatnot within that district, as well as all of the events that are going on. We talked about resource partners and invite you to find the resource partner nearest you. You can go to, like for instance, go to the Sacramento district office webpage, click on local resources, and all of those resource partners in our district will come up. Or if you're in this, in the coastal counties, you're serviced by the San Francisco district office. You can find out the same information. Depending upon where you are. Special shout out to the PTACs because they're contracting centric, as am I. We talked about them being a nationwide network. We're lucky in that we've got 3 PTACs here in Northern California. I mentioned the first one there that's in Sacramento, and you can see the counties that they're responsible for. We also have one in Monterey that covers the whole central part of the state. And then, obviously the one here in Eureka, covering those counties as well. So great resources, anything to do with federal or public sector contracting, certainly get in touch with your local PTAC.
I do want to cut in on that slide there and just make quick corrections. We have several more PTACs in California than those, and actually our service area has 9 more counties. So I have a feeling this might be 2 years out of date. But okay. We also have there's a PTAC in San Diego. There's a PTAC in Los Angeles County. But that website at the bottom, aptac-us.org, that is the correct place to find all of the PTACs. It's kept update. So thanks for the shout out.
Yeah, there's also a PTAC in Riverside County as well. So the net message is there's technical assistance not too far from where you are. And I'll make sure I update that slide. I think the default was we knew that you covered all the coastal counties, but we wanted to highlight some of the inland counties that you guys have responsibility for as well. So that's my net message. You're not alone. There's a lot of folks to help you out. So James, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, let's take a look at this. Thank you so much, Paul. That was a great presentation. That was very informative. We are always putting together webinars. We've ramped up our webinar capacity during COVID. So we've been churning them out. I've been sitting here hosting these all the time. So this is actually the longest break we've had in a while. Then our next webinar is going to be on September 16th. It's coming up in a couple weeks. And we put this one together in light of all of the tragic fires that are happening across California and indeed the West Coast. So the Fire Response and Recovery webinar, Christina Jones will be presenting that. She's one of our procurement specialists, and that's taking place 10 a.m. Wednesday, September 16th. You can go to our website, norcalptac.org/calendar, and sign up for any of these. We're also doing 2 webinars. They are repeats, so you don't need to sign up for both of them. You can pick one on the Woman-Owned Small Business Certification, which Paul touched briefly on. There's one on September 17th, so the day after the other one, and one on October 6th. Looks like that one's actually at 11 a.m., which is a bit unusual. Usually ours are at 10. Then, as you may or may not know, the federal government has been changing their requirements for cybersecurity in contracting, if you're handling any sort of sensitive information. And so we've been doing a series of updates over the last year and a half. This is our 3rd one, I believe, and it's going to be focused on a Q&A session. So a nice long time to get your questions out there and to really learn what you need to do in order to become compliant. So this Cybersecurity Update Q&A Virtual Coffee and Connect series, that's September 23rd. All right, I think it's time for the Q&A. Here you have Paul's information. I also put it in the chat window. Everyone's gonna get these slides, so you don't need to scramble and write it down if you don't want. I never forget to send them out, so I'll send them out this afternoon.
Perfect. So I'll just throw it out there. Yeah, there's my contact information. You've got some questions, want to drill down a little bit deeper on some of the things we've talked about today, just feel free to reach out to me. Email's probably the best. And then we'll assist you any way we can.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks again, Paul. All right, let's launch into some questions here. Just a quick reminder, we're not entering our questions into the chat. We're entering them into the Q&A. Looks like you guys have got that. We only have one question so far, so please do keep them coming, and we will get them answered. First question here is, Robert Joy wants to congratulate us, say it's a super helpful presentation, and he has 3 questions. So let's start with the first. Okay. How is fpds.gov different than betasam.gov? Are FPDS and its users in the process of migrating to betasam?
FPDS is the database for contracting activity that's already taken place, okay? And it includes not only the original contract, it includes any modifications to that contract. It includes, the contract number, the prime contractor, the agency, the amount of dollars that were allocated, what the current expenditures against that contract are. It lags by about 90 days, but all of the contracting activity in terms of what's being executed is in FPDS. Beta.sam.gov is more of a here's what's coming down the path type of database. That's where agencies will publish their sources sought when they're doing market research. They'll publish their solicitations when they're asking for pricing, whether it's an invitation to bid, a sealed bid, whatever the case may be. So Beta.sam is the replacement for FedBizOps. Although there is an opportunity to put in award information in Beta.sam, it's not nearly as robust as FPDS. So FPDS is I'll say the Bible. That's going to have the most accurate information as well as much more detailed information on contracting activities than you'll find in beta.sam.gov.
All right, great answer, Paul. We've got another question here from Robert. If we are a small business in SAM, where do we find the capabilities narrative on the SBA site? I can't find it.
That would be in SBA's database is the Dynamic Small Business Search, DSBS. I think if you Google DSBS, it'll get you to the URL. Essentially, DSBS is SBA's database of small businesses that have registered. So we talk back and forth with SAM, and if you can go to DSBS, you can scroll down and you can actually get to a subset box where it says searching for a specific profile. You can put in your firm's name. I actually suggest you put in your firm's DUNS number and then see if DSBS finds you. That's the first thing, because you want to verify that you're in SBA's database. So go to DSBS, put in your DUNS number, see if it finds you. If it does, it'll highlight your business name in blue. You can click on it, it'll be a live link, and that will take you to your SBA profile. And as you scroll down, you'll see all the information that you've input, but there will be a spot where you can see capabilities narrative, and hopefully it's not blank. And there will be a spot where you can see keywords as well. And I believe those are input when you're going through and creating your entity in SAM, and you go to create, to input your, what they call SBA supplemental information.
All right, thank you. We're knocking them down. The third question from Robert. Robert's stealing the show here, by the way.
That's
is
okay.
How do we, it's okay if we don't have any others, so thank you,
right.
Robert. How do we find out about and plug into these virtual procurement support events?
I think there again, it's, targeting, figure out which agencies you're interested in. For instance, the Navy Gold Coast. The Navy down in San Diego is highly involved with that. So NAVFAC, which is Navy Facilities, NAVFAC Southwest. If you Google that, you get to their website. It might take a little bit of effort, but you can find out, what sort of education, webinars, conferences, virtual events that they're going to be participating in, or maybe even conducting themselves. So, for instance, Navy Gold Coast, NDIA. If you Google NDIA, that's kind of the industry association that oversees this conference, but it's really driven by the Navy. NAVFAC Southwest, based out of San Diego specifically, but there's all other kinds of federal agencies that participate, federal agencies from all around the country that typically would bring representatives to San Diego for as the exhibitors in the exhibit hall, and also for matchmaking opportunities. And Gold Coast is going to have a virtual matchmaking facility. So if you sign up, then you can avail yourself of that opportunity as well.
I believe that's coming up next week, right?
Correct.
Monday. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's too late to sign up, but
I don't believe so. I got an email today saying it's not too late to sign up.
Oh, well, that answers it fairly clearly, doesn't it?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So it's nice this year. It's virtual, so you don't need any travel plans or expenses.
Exactly.
All right. Thanks, Paul. Joseph Ritchie is asking, if I develop a software application, what is the best way to market it to the federal government as a COTS solution?
Well, software and services, they're usually, a lot of how they're procured is via multiple award schedules through GSA, or they call them GWACs, government-wide acquisition contracts. So that, and the thing about it is most of the IT, if you will, decisions are made back in the Washington, D.C. Beltway. I will tell you, at least here in the Sacramento district office, very little, we see very little in terms of localized IT type of acquisitions from a federal standpoint. There may be more in the San Francisco area because there's a lot more agency offices there, but by and large, my experience is for software and related type solutions, typically the decision makers are located in Washington, D.C. So there again, figure out which agencies your particular application would be most beneficial to, and then just start getting into, you could start with their, every agency has what they call an Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization, or OSDBU. Get to their OSDBU office because, on the web, of course, because that might tell you how you can register with them to gain some visibility, to gain some visibility and exposure to the folks in that agency that are involved with making the kinds of decisions for the software applications that you're developing, and then just kind of taking it from there, developing a targeted marketing campaign.
Do we have any other questions? We do have time, so don't be shy.
That's true.
Give it just a few more seconds.
Okay. No problem.
Cool. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions. We will answer one if you still entered in right now, but I'm going to start signing us off here. Thanks again, Paul. We really appreciate you partnering with us. It provides a tremendous value to our clients and to the public. So I'm glad we were able to do this event. And of course, Patricia Silva for joining us as usual. Always a pleasure. And of course, for all the participants, we really do it for you. We hope you find these webinars of value. And we hope that you keep coming to them. And if you're in our service area that you do apply to become a client, we'd like to get to know you better. Cutting things off now, but I want to let you know when you exit this webinar, you'll be directed towards a page which will show you a URL for a Google form. If you click on that, it's going to bring you to a satisfaction survey. You can fill it out anonymously if you'd like, if you have nasty things to say, or you can, it just takes a couple minutes. You can fill out however you like. It helps us stay good with our funder and know how to improve our services. You'll also receive an email later today with another link for that. So you have 2 chances to get at that survey. As I've promised, the video recording from this session will be emailed to all participants along with the slide deck. So rest assured you will get that no later than tomorrow, most likely this afternoon. And once again, thanks everyone. We appreciate you showing up and have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much, everyone. Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.